Hello, this is a Hitchcock review, and heads up, there will be spoilers in the last couple minutes of the video. I will give you fair warning when I get to that point. Today I am talking about Rebecca, Alfred Hitchcock's 1940 adaptation of the 1938 novel by Daphne du Maurier, running 130 minutes, starring Joan Fontaine and Laurence Olivier. This was Hitchcock's first American film, and the only one of his films to win the Academy Award for Best Picture. It also won for Best Black and White Cinematography. Rebecca tells the story of a shy, awkward English girl working as a paid companion who meets and falls in love with mysterious Maxim de Winter, a wealthy Englishman still recovering from the death of his first wife a year ago. After a whirlwind romance, they marry, and he brings her home to Manderley. Manderley sounds better when pronounced with an English accent as Mandalay, his sprawling country estate where she finds herself constantly reminded of the woman she's replaced, Rebecca, whose memory lingers around every corner. It's a spooky romance and an excellently done film. The acting and directing, photography, Franz Waxman's score, the dreamy atmosphere. Visually, it's a detailed movie. The huge set design of Manderley is imposing and a little fantastic. When Joan Fontaine enters a room, my attention is always drawn to the massive size of the door because the handle is placed at such a height as to make her look like a little girl lost in a giant's palace. Like I mentioned in my Jane Eyre review, I'm extremely fond of Joan Fontaine in these kinds of roles. She was nominated for an Academy Award for Rebecca, but did not win, though they let her have it the next year for her performance in her second Hitchcock film, Suspicion. According to legend, her co-star Laurence Olivier, sore that his wife-to-be Vivian Leigh didn't get the lead, was brusque with Fontaine. Hitchcock encouraged this behavior and was rough with her himself to provoke an ideal performance. This method is questionable, but I can't argue with the results, because as the second Mrs. de Winter, Fontaine is perfect. I sympathize with her awkwardness and insecurities oh so much, and that makes it intensely satisfying to watch her develop a backbone and finally stand up for herself. Laurence Olivier as Maxim de Winter might be a little younger than the part calls for, and the silver they put in his hair isn't super convincing, but it makes him look very distinguished, and he does a fine job. I think I might have had a little crush on him as Maxim de Winter at some point, when I was 14 maybe. I think this is probably my favorite of his performances, although his Richard III is pretty great. Completely different from this, though. I can't help wondering, of course, what it would have been like if Ronald Colman had gotten the part. Story goes that Hitchcock wanted him for it, and he was interested, and even Olivier himself said Colman should be doing it, but Colman had a scheduling conflict and couldn't. Going through some highlights of the all-around outstanding supporting cast, there's Judith Anderson as Mrs. Danvers, the creepiest housekeeper ever. No one can touch her performance. Menace just flows out of her. She is a creature of hatred and spite with something possibly a little off upstairs. She makes your skin crawl, and her scenes with the second Mrs. de Winter in Rebecca's room are chilling. Written and choreographed and designed so well. There's also George Sanders, who did 2 movies with Hitchcock in 1940. I prefer his more likable character in Foreign Correspondent to Jack Favell, but this is a classic example of him playing the unmitigated cad. Gladys Cooper has a relatively small part, but I was struck by how much younger and breezier she seems here than in other things. She and Nigel Bruce are one of the film's brightest spots. And I'll also mention Florence Bates as Mrs. Van Hopper, who's only in it for a short time, but leaves her mark. I like the moment when Maxim tells her that he's marrying her companion. I love reaction shots, and that's a fun one. As far as faithfulness to the book goes, I guess it's faithful except for a few minor points and one enormous one, which I'll get to in a minute. But I'm not really the best judge of faithfulness in this case because I read the book years ago, and I don't really remember much about it. I don't even remember if I liked it or not. I know the story is often compared with Jane Eyre, and I will acknowledge that there are similarities, since they're pretty obvious, but to me, Jane Eyre and Rebecca are different. They have separate settings and storylines and sets of characters. Similarities between the two of them are about as common as I would expect to find between any 2 stories of the Gothic romance genre, so I don't dwell on them too much. I do have a couple things I want to say that take us into spoiler territory, so here's that fair warning to stop watching now if you need to. I don't want to have it on my conscience that I kept someone from watching a good movie by ruining the ending, even if the movie is 76 years old. So, continue at your own peril. Okay, first, here's the enormous change that I mentioned. The matter of the crime. They change it from murder to accidental death, I guess? That's quite a bit different. There's still the issue of getting rid of the body and lying about cause of death, but that's so much tamer than actual hands-on murder. I would think Hitchcock, of all people, wouldn't have been bothered by the original circumstance. So what happened? Was there a concern that audiences would be too horrified and reject Maxim? Is this a censorship thing? Second, I want to express my appreciation for a scene I consider pivotal to the movie and its central relationship, and that is the confession scene and its follow-up. Maxim de Winter and his young bride don't have the best relationship. To him, she's a nice little thing, amusingly different from his old associations. He does love her, but in a distant, often corrective way, and secretly he's too damaged to believe her when she says that she loves him, and she's too timid to try to draw him out. They both know something's wrong, but they can't communicate well enough to fix it. The confession scene flips everything over. She has to track him down to the boathouse, where she finds him sitting alone in quiet defeat. As he finally tells the truth about the past, everything between them is stripped away, all pretense and shyness, and they see each other with new clarity. She's surprised by his vulnerability, and he by her loyalty and strength. The next scene shows her descending the stairs, more smartly dressed and confident than ever before. She joins him by the fire, and after some more discussion, they share their first real kiss of the movie. She has now assumed the role of most intimate confidant, trusted with his deepest secret, and with the air clear, they are free to restart their marriage with a better promise of happiness. I love that, and I love the way it's communicated. So that's what I've got to say about Hitchcock's Rebecca. I thoroughly enjoy this movie, and I know others do too, so feel free to contribute your thoughts on it, because I would love to hear them. Thanks for watching! Bye!